Okay, good evening everyone. Sorry, we're starting a little late today. Tonight we are doing questions and answers, where you send in your questions on our website and I answer them. So we have 31 questions. I haven't read them, so this is all going to be new. So someone here talking about the view that relaxing bodily mental formations is a critical step without which it's hard to get deeper into the jhanas. Okay. I mean, we're not interested really in going deeper into the jhanas. So there are different ways you can practice meditation if you're interested in becoming enlightened, but ultimately you have to practice insight meditation. It's just a question of how you work it, because why I say it like that is because there are many types of meditation that aren't going to lead to enlightenment, and the key ingredient that's missing is insight. So it's possible to practice only samatha meditation, tranquility meditation, and never become enlightened. But it's not possible to practice insight meditation, and I mean it's not possible for practicing it correctly for it to not lead to enlightenment. Meaning it's a insufficient ingredient. Okay? Or it's a necessary ingredient. But it's sufficient as well because it's possible to practice insight meditation, and as a result of practicing insight meditation, develop calm. Right? The calm can come along with insight meditation, obviously, if you're starting to see things more clearly. I think this is a big thing that the critics of dry insight meditation don't see, is that you're obviously becoming more calm as you understand things more clearly. It's unless they say, no, it's not possible to see things clearly without going into the jhanas first, which I think is patently false. I mean, we have meditators come through here who can all verify that they learn many things about themselves that drastically and quite impressively reduce their stress levels, make them more calm. So calm comes along with insight. Now, if you practice tranquility first, of course, your mind is very strong when you begin to practice insight meditation. So it's just a whole other path. But I'm not going to go into too much detail about other people's views, because, I mean, this is all just intellectual discussion. It's questions like these that are more interesting. So here's a question about giving attention to the rising and falling of the stomach. Become sense and awareness that I'm somehow watching myself. Is this experience something I should cultivate, or do I simply note it and return to breathing? There will never be an experience that you should cultivate. The idea of cultivating, the only thing you should ever cultivate is mindfulness, and that's through the noting. Cultivating any experience is the way of the ordinary mind. Our minds are inclined to seek out and become absorbed in experiences, and that is what we're trying to change. We're trying to see things objectively and not get absorbed in them or caught up in them. So any kind of cultivation, whatever that might mean, is not the path. So you should definitely note that feeling. Okay, I tend to have an extreme personality, I think is what you're saying. But I get caught up, obsession with certain subjects. When I meditate, I get obsessed with the practice itself. This leaves me depressed and seeking good feeling in unhealthy ways. Well, meditation can make you very depressed because it challenges you. I mean, meditation is not meant to make things not meant to be an easy path where you avoid or where you escape all your problems. So when you feel depressed in meditation, the important thing is to not be discouraged by that, and to see that as a challenge and something to work on, to change the moments of the loop that you're caught up in, right? It's really a loop of experiences and reactions. And when you start to be mindful, you break that up and you change it. So when you're depressed, you would just say to yourself, depressed, depressed. When you feel obsessed about the meditation, I'm not sure what sort of feeling that is. It's like a wanting or a stress about it, or so on. Whatever the feeling is, just note that. Is it okay to constantly be switching from object, or should I try to stay with an object for a longer period of time? Try to stay with something until it ceases, if possible. It's not momentary concentration, but it's just a good habit. It's sort of a habit that you're trying to form. Because certain habits and techniques are going to be more conducive to developing concentration. And that's one of them. If you jump from object to object, there's a potential, and it's not wrong per se, but it's more likely to lead to distraction. If you stay with one object for longer, you can be momentarily aware of it. Mindfulness can arise, but it's also less distracting. And it's also a good way to ensure that you're not avoiding an object. If you flit from object to object, it's easy to then, when something bad comes up, you jump to something else. When something you can't handle, you jump to something else. It has the potential to lead to bad habits. Can you say something about fasting? Well, it's not recommended because this meditation is not going to make you calm. It's going to be disturbing. The calm comes through working out your problems, which is quite disturbing and often stressful. So there's going to be a need for food. I wouldn't recommend eating a lot, but not eating at all is not a good idea. It's not going to be healthy because of the nature, the state of your mind during insight meditation. How does one practice with me directly? Well, you can practice online. We do online courses. And you can also come here. You can look on our website and sirimangalo.org and look at our schedule and find a way to come and stay. The sudden onset of panic attacks, negative thoughts, my heart starts racing. How to handle something like this while driving? The more I note the breath, the more I feel like suffocating, which makes you scared. So don't focus only on the breath. You should be mindful. Our meditation is not just about the breath, not really about the breath at all. It's about your experiences. So when you feel afraid, with panic attacks, it's important to be able to separate the physical and the mental. So the mental is the feeling of fear and the disliking and the desire to be free from it when you try to stop it, for example. And then the physical is the heart racing and the stomach tension and the shoulders tense and the headache and whatever kind of feeling there is, the shaking. It can be many different things, but all of that is just physical, and it's important to remind yourself, even sort of without meditating, to remind yourself, that's not panic, that's just physical. That's okay, that's not a problem. And the real problem is the fear. But even the fear, you don't want to see it as a problem. So you want to look at the fear as just fear and try and experience it without reacting. If feeling emotion is strong and permanent, is it useful to note not on the feeling itself, but on resistance, aversion, or wanting to change it? Yes, definitely it's useful to note the resistance, the aversion to the feeling. It's layers, or it's a sequence. Our habits are patterns, and you can cut you should cut it at whatever level is readily apparent. Still find the concept of rebirth very confusing. Karmic consequences go far beyond our so-called death, but I don't see how you go from there to the conclusion that an insect could have been a human in previous life. How can it be so linear? One particular human is born as one particular insect. Yeah, well, consciousness is an individual consciousness. Our consciousness does. It's not like it disperses and goes to all different insects. Reality is linear, so there's after death. There's all, you have to. So you've been misinformed that consciousness is somehow not individual. It is an individual thing, an individual strain or chain of consciousness, and that doesn't change. But being born a human just means that stream of consciousness taking up residence in the fetus. So the same with an insect and so on. I'm not doing very good about hitting this button. I have to hit the button, then answer it. Is dressing in black detrimental to the practice? No. So wearing white clothes is sort of a reminder of purity, cleanliness. Dark black is night. I mean, it's really just a tradition. It's not even a Buddhist tradition, but it's something that was picked up by Buddhists, because in India they wore white because it was signified pure. I mean, things get dirty, they get darker, right? When you clean things, I mean, they don't always get whiter, but and darkness is associated with ignorance, and light is associated with knowledge, because when you light a fire, light a candle, I guess it's whiter, I don't know. White and black just have these, even in India they had these connotations of having, these significances, but it's really just cultural. I mean, one of my African Canadian friends, he asked me, he said, "So what's this deal about white and black?" And I said, well, honestly, it doesn't apply to humans, because we're not black. There's no such thing as a black human. Not that it would matter if there was, because another, there's a good Jataka about that. Jataka 440, I think. I remember it because I always go back to it. It's about a black guy who's meditating. The Bodhisattva is born black, dark-skinned. Everyone calls him Blackie. And this angel comes down and talks to him and says, "What are you black? What do you expect to do, you Blackie?" Like, because black, of course, has this connotation of being bad. And this is a very cultural thing, because people who work in the fields all day, the poor people, would of course have darker skin, and the rich people who would live inside would have lighter skin. So there's that connotation. So it does have a racist connotation. It's in fact interesting. White and black are somehow tied up with racism, or it's not even racism, it's whatever the word would be, colorism. Dark-skinned people are treated very poorly in many societies. Not just this whole American slave trade thing, but in India, and even in Sri Lanka, even in Thailand, all these places, dark-skinned people. Anyway, no, it has nothing to do with anything. It's just culture. I wanted to start my journey in Buddhism from the basic or beginning. It's a Buddhist library. I wish to learn like the Buddhists. Is there any proper method that you go through the teachings? It depends on the country. Every country has their own way. I mean, we generally just encourage people to meditate, and as they're living as a meditator, to then spend time reading the Buddhist teachings. How can I try to avoid or try to have distance towards entertainment? I mean, I wouldn't worry too much about that if you're living as a householder. It's not, it's difficult. It's certainly possible. The best way would be to come and do a meditation course, or find a place to do a meditation course, because it's a difficult one. But if you work on it, you can. I mean, ideally living in a meditation center would be the best way. Okay, I don't want to really talk about other people who claim to be enlightened, so I'm going to just skip that. Sorry. Guilt seems to cripple me, both my time. Simple things that I'm aware I should not be guilty about. What do I do? Wouldn't worry too much about it. I mean, that's an important part of the practice, is not to worry too much about things. Yeah, you're feeling guilty. Don't react to the guilt, right? Because this is what someone mentioned earlier. You react to your reactions. You feel guilty, then you react to that, and you're upset because you're feeling guilty. So just note feeling. Guilt is kind of like a disliking or a frustration, an unpleasant feeling. So note those. You have to be, really the best way is to just it's like a stare down, really. If you blink, it wins. If you don't blink, you win. You wait until it blinks. Mindfulness is really just like a stare down. You stop reacting. You stop letting your emotions and experiences get to you. Did the Buddha invent the mindfulness satipatthana? I think you could say it's something that each Buddha comes up with, but yes, it is mindfulness is satipatthana is a construct. It's not a ultimate reality. This is an example of something that doesn't exist in reality. It's a format or a construct created by the Buddha. So not all constructs are bad. Constructs are often very good. Yoga Nidra. Okay, again, not going to talk about other techniques. To be clear, we only teach one technique, so anything about is this useful, is that useful, this technique useful. I mean, I could. It's not that it's a bad question, it's too much. Let's keep it simple. The answer is probably no. I mean, the answer is probably maybe, but maybe. Yeah, I guess the answer is probably maybe. So theoretically we can avoid contact by redirecting our consciousness to another object. Where we deliberately redirect consciousness when sad, scary thoughts arise. Okay. That's an interesting question. I don't think I've ever had this question before, or anything like it. It's not a very uncommon concept. The idea to divert your consciousness, and there are cases where it can be wholesome. It's not insight meditation, but for example, if you're angry at someone, you divert your mind by cultivating love. Or really, with mindfulness, it's a sort of way of doing that. Is if you have ignorance about something, you change that by changing your mind. But diverting your mind from something that you don't like, something that's scary. First of all, contact has arisen. Now, if you divert your mind, if you're able to divert your mind before the fear arises, that would be interesting. But the concept of avoiding, you're creating a new kind of contact. I mean, there's many minds involved with that process of diverting your attention. It involves contact many times, because contact is in every moment where you have some kind of volition. I'm going to divert my attention. So there's contact going on there in I would say a generally unwholesome way, because you're avoiding problems. You have aversion to it. You're cultivating a habit of aversion. So it's definitely not a good idea. Okay, made a new account. Everything's not working. I just want to scream right now. Well, send a. Do we have a contact form somewhere you can use? Someone help this person? I'll redirect you to our support team. Hopefully someone can help you. Sometimes it's possible. It's possible that it's very difficult to do good things. Doing good things is not always easy, and sometimes bad past karma can just get in the way in really strange ways. So I would say, take that as your path, a part of your path. These are the obstacles that are placed before you, not by God or something, but this is the situation that you're in, which can often be very bizarre in terms of the obstacles that are put in front of us again and again and again. So, consider that to be something you just have to work through. I mean, if you've read my booklet, hopefully you have access to my booklet on how to meditate. That's really the most important thing. And that's Buddhism. That should be your doorway to Buddhism. Don't worry about everything else too much. Try and just be mindful of everything else. And the wanting to scream, well, it's a good meditation object. Okay, someone talking about kasina. No, I don't teach this. Samatha. Don't teach that. No, don't teach that. Don't teach that. Yeah, okay, I'd recommend reading my booklet because I'm just going to skip all those. What's your view on someone close to you cheats you in any way? Well, don't forget that, and, be wary next time, but also be mindful of your reactions to it. It doesn't mean you have to let people walk all over you necessarily. I mean, it's an interesting practice to just let people walk all over you, but you'd have to be quite enlightened to allow that to be a fruitful practice. Mostly it just make you very upset and angry. So, just be careful around such people in the future, but also work through your emotions at having been cheated. How to not identify with this memory of myself as I. I mean, you can't just not identify with it. That's our habit. That's we're accustomed to dealing with it in that way. Meditation is about changing that by seeing that it's a ridiculous sort of perspective, because there's nothing there that's me or mine or I. Reality is just moments of experience. So the more comfortable and accustomed you become to being mindful, the less accustomed you will be to thinking of things as me and mine and I. How should we understand the middle way? Okay, the middle way is a razor, really. The ultimate middle way is the perfect point where you are neither hurting yourself, like pushing anything away, or pulling anything towards you. Really, the perfect middle way is the moment when you're perfectly mindful. You're not reacting in any way. So it's not just some general sense of moderation. It certainly has really nothing to do with moderation. It means neither torturing yourself, doing anything that hurts you, nor doing anything for the purpose of cultivating pleasure. That's the middle way. And really the perfect way of doing that is mindfulness. Wonder what questions I would ask. So you have no questions because I feel that meditation has the same answer for whatever question. Note them. Feeling and keep noting. I mean, basically, you can see answering a lot of these questions, there's other information to provide. But if you're comfortable with that, if you don't have any questions, consider yourself in a very good way. Is tomorrow Magga Puja? Very well might be. I'm not so up on the... But it's around this time every year. Very well, maybe. So those are traditional holidays. In fact, I think only really in Thailand. In Sri Lanka, they don't celebrate. Thailand, Cambodia, Laos. In Sri Lanka, they don't celebrate them. Not as anything beyond the Poya. They call it the Poya Day. But I don't think they have a Magga Puja. It's a Thai thing, or it's a Southeast Asian thing. Okay, someone having jolts. Jolts a part of your body. I mean, there are many strange experiences that can come from meditation. It sounds like you might be taking more from this than it actually has inherently. I mean, it's just an experience. It's nothing to do with wisdom. It's just the experience that you're having at this point in your meditation, which is not a good sign or a bad sign. It's just an experience. It's impermanent, it's unsatisfying, it's uncontrollable. That's how you should look at it. You should just see it arising and ceasing, note it, and let it go. But it sounds like you're doing great, meditating and not sleeping too much. Can you talk about the Kuka Chupama Sutta? I always get these ones mixed up. Which one is the Kukacha? Kukachupama, the saw. It's the saw. Okay. I don't know what you want me to talk about. He says that if someone is, I mean, it's a really powerful simile. If someone's cutting your limbs off, you should not. Anyone who feels anger for the person sawing your limbs off, anyone who feels anger at that moment is not a follower of mine. That's a long story. There's a story about, and there's many different similes. I don't know that there's much to talk about. I mean, you'd have to give me a more specific question, because the sutta is fairly straightforward, I think. I'm going to skip this one because it's nothing to do with what we teach. Not a question, but welcome. What if a person understands Buddhist principles at a very young age? Isn't it boring to wait to die for liberation? Well, an enlightened person is never bored, so no. Beings are sent to hell, heaven. Is it on the basis of mental state of the being, or on the basis of wholesome or unwholesome acts? Well, the thing about acts is they involve very powerful mind states. Like if you kill someone, it's much more powerful than just wanting to kill them. But it's still all to do with the mind states, your state of mind. If on the other hand you kill someone without intending to, it's not an unwholesome thing. Something to do with Tantra? No, sorry. Is there a benefit to breath control? Don't teach it, but I don't think it's that useful. Again, I'm not really interested in answering questions about this practice or that practice. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? There's infinite number of practices. It's not really what this is for. How to differentiate being conscious from just a state of high concentration? Or is it the same? I mean, states of high concentration tend to have their own qualities to them, and they're fairly easy to distinguish between ordinary consciousness. But I'm not really sure about that question. Been a little okay, this is an interesting question. Well, it depends very much on the person. It's not everyone is going to become enlightened in a week or a month or even a year. For some people it's going to take many lifetimes. Does it take longer? I mean, again, it depends on the individual. It may very well be that what you've built up, your wholesomeness, is only good enough to get you that far, and Now you've got a lot more work to do to get the rest of the stages. But it depends much on the person, on the individual. How discern the difference between fruition knowledge and path knowledge at the stage of Sakadagami? It seems a bit grey since no fetters are eradicated. So, fetters are eradicated, but not categorically. At that stage, a certain level of greed and anger, greed and aversion, have been eradicated. But I mean, the thing to note about really all of these states is that it's the same experience. It's the experience of Nibbana. That doesn't change. They're given names like path and fruit because of the effect, not because of the nature of the mind. The mind has the same nature. The experience has the same nature, if you want to call it an experience. The process, or the moments are identical. It's just the first one in the sequence is called path fruition, because it's the one that has the effect. If you pour water on a fire, the fire's out. If you then pour more water on the fire to cool it down, it's not going to put the fire more out. The flame is already out. So it's only the first time, the first moment, that we call path consciousness. In the seen is a good one. In the seen, only the seen. In the heard, only the heard. In the sensed, only the sensed. In the cognized, only the cognized. It's basically that. This is a very good quote for an insight meditation practitioner, because this is basically an explanation of insight. Let seeing just be seeing. When you see something, and try it to be just that. It's where the Buddha talks again and again. He says, "Nanimitta gahi nanubyanjana gahi." One doesn't grasp at the particulars or the characteristics. One is only aware of seeing as seeing. That's where insight comes from, because then you see the building blocks of reality are really just seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, thinking. And you see them arising and ceasing, and you lose your attachment to all these other things that you realize just don't even exist. All right, well, that was good. A bunch of questions tonight. We got through them. So that's all the questions for tonight. Thank you all for tuning in. Good number, even though I was late. It's good to see people interested. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a good night.